All right, welcome back again. My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of Paydirt DFS.com. I already did kind of a small intro before I started recording, but now that we're recording, welcome to the Saturday stream. This is a stream that I try to do every Saturday. I did miss last week. Apologize for that. But breaking down the NFL main slate going on tomorrow. Typically, this is going over things like the range of outcomes, chalk, where you should pivot to, what kind of stacks you should be on. And kind of looking at the macro environment of the slate, getting a feel for where you should be putting your ownership, where you should be putting your salary. This week is going to be a little bit shorter than usual, just because I have parenting responsibilities to take care of in about half an hour. So I'm going to be hitting that after this, but we got a slate breakdown tomorrow. So let's go ahead and get that started. As usual, if you have any questions or anything to add, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We'll try to get to it. As is tradition, I am drinking something during the stream. This week it is going to be a double shot espresso Americano with a truffle in it. I believe that it is actually a hazelnut truffle. It's delicious. Typically, I'd be doing wine or whiskey, but I was feeling a little bit tired in front of this one. So I'm not doing either one of those today. But that's okay. I'm sure that y'all will forgive me. So let's go ahead and get started. So usually what we do is we're going to start with the macro environment. We're going to look at some game totals. We're going to look at some price on game totals as well. We'll jump over the range of outcomes to do that. And then we're going to be talking about some usage. We're going to be talking about where ownership is lying. We're going to be looking at what stacks you should be on. And then we're going to be kind of looking at what the best and worst plays are based on everything the models are showing. So actually, quick note before we get into this stuff. This week is fucking weird. All right. The quarterback play this week is probably the worst that we have seen in, I don't know, man, maybe years, I want to say. I can't remember a slate with quarterback play this bad. I mean, like, just look at these fucking warlocks over here, all right? So we have Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, right? These guys actually project well. And then we have CJ Stroud and Dak Prescott, guys who project okay. And then it's just all fucking downhill from here, right? Like, we got quarterbacks projecting less than $6,000 wide receivers. Tyson Bagent, I don't know how to pronounce his name and I don't care. Jaron Hall, I do not know who that is. Clayton Tune does not sound like a real person. Brett Rypien, or Rypien, I don't fucking know. Like, these guys, they are all just terrible. And there will be people that are like, oh, but James, they're less than $5,000. And it's like, yeah, because they're practice squad quarterbacks. Like, they shouldn't be even in consideration in the vast majority of lineups. Like, maybe you use Aiden O'Connell because he was good in the preseason. Maybe you use Mac Jones, because he's up against Washington, and Washington is a fucking clown show, right? Like, maybe you use those guys under 5K, but you're not using Rypien, because why would you? You're not using Bagent, because one, why would you? And two, it's New Orleans. You're not using Jaron Hall, because why would you? He projects for 12 fantasy points. You're not using Clayton Tune. He's up against Cleveland defense. Like, where would you go if you were paying down? You shouldn't. It'd be a terrible idea. So this week is going to be mostly focused on, like, if you wanted to do nothing but play these four quarterbacks, I would not blame you. If you just wanted to X out every other quarterback in the pool, I absolutely would not blame you. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, this quarterback week is fucking tragic. Let's take a look at some game totals. So Cincinnati, Buffalo, not on the slate. Kansas City, Miami, not on the slate. And then we have Baltimore versus Seattle. Team total of 25.25 for Baltimore. Pretty good. 1.47 rushing touchdowns. I suppose we can jump in here and do this. 1.2 passing touchdowns. That's not incredible. 1.47 rushing touchdowns. That is the best on the slate. And then Philadelphia, Another team with a high team total, 25, 1.32 rushing touchdowns, 1.08 passing touchdowns. Let's sort this by passing touchdowns and just see what we got here. Oh, okay. Not on the slate. 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 And then Carolina, Green Bay, and Houston. That is fucking gross. This is gross that Carolina has the highest passing touchdown expectation on the slate. Followed by Jordan Love. Followed by Houston. And then 1.3 for Minnesota, but we have no idea if Minnesota is actually going to maintain a high pass rate without Kirk Cousins and without Justin Jefferson. Then we have New England. At least Mac Jones is like an NFL caliber quarterback. And then Tampa Bay, 1.26. So it gets pretty gross here really, really quick, right? No quarterbacks on the slate projected for over 1.5 passing touchdowns is really, really bad. It just shows how bad this week really is in terms of passing upside. Let's take a look at game totals here. So Buffalo, Cincinnati, not on slate. Miami, Kansas City, not on slate. Dallas, Philadelphia is on the slate. 47 team total. That's pretty low, all things considered. People are going to be having a lot of interest in Dallas. People are obviously going to have a lot of interest in Jalen Hurts. This is, I want to be clear about this, the epitome of a Dak letdown game. This is a spot where the Dallas defense cannot get them a lead. This is a spot where they are not going to be able to have much success on the ground. It's going to have to be all Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott sucks. So, and I shouldn't even say that he sucks. I don't think that Dak Prescott is really bad. I just think that he just doesn't have any upside, right? I always make the comparison of he's Southern Kirk Cousins, right? He's just Kirk Cousins that plays for the Cowboys. But the difference is that Kirk Cousins is anywhere between, at any given time, the 10th best quarterback and the 13th best quarterback in the league. He's right there. All right? Dak Prescott is anywhere from the 13th best quarterback to the 17th best quarterback. He doesn't have the upside for the 10th best quarterback in the league, where Kirk Cousins doesn't have really the downside for the 17th worst quarterback in the league, or the 17th best quarterback in the league, right? Dak Prescott just doesn't have the same upside that Kirk Cousins does. He's a better game manager, but he's just not, he doesn't have the upside. I mean, Philly has not really, the thing with Philly has been, let's see, let's go take a look at why Philly has been getting torn up in the air. Let's just go take a look-see. All right, team styles. Let's go take a look at Philadelphia here. Okay, so Philadelphia has played New England in week 1. They did not get torn up there. They played Minnesota, where they got torn up. They've played Washington twice, where they have gotten torn up both times. Tampa Bay did not tear them up. The Rams were not able to tear them up. The Jets were not able to tear them up. And they faced Miami. Right? Yeah, I mean, Sam Howell has coached them twice, but Sam Howell has also been pretty good. Did Mac Jones really torch them? Did Mac Jones really torch them? Is my memory just eluding me here? He had 58 dropbacks that game. His yards per attempt was 5.8. Yeah, he had 30 fantasy points because he threw the ball 54 times. That's not getting torn up. That's just because he threw the ball 54 times. 5.85 yards per attempt is not tearing a defense up. I refute that. Sam Howell has done well both times. And to the note, Sam Howell has not been terrible when he's not getting sacked. Sam Howell has actually had a pretty decent upside this year. But yeah, I don't think that they have been getting ripped up. CD and Dak's greater than Mac plus anything. Okay, so yes, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But I don't think that Dak steps up here. I'm happy to just say that and have that clipped to the Twitter or whatever. Agent War Komet has the highest Levac score on the slate. Yeah, well, that's because there's a bunch of bad quarterbacks, and Komet is a decent tight end, and like somebody has to score points somewhere, right? Like all of them just project so badly that the variance is just going to be massive on this league. I mean, I'm not going to play Agent. There's no way I'm going to play Agent. I'm probably only going to play quarterbacks that are good. Anyway, we're going to jump back in here. So in terms of game totals, Dallas-Philadelphia, I think this is a Dak letdown game. I don't think they scored very many points at all. Seattle-Baltimore is in a pretty decent spot, 44 overall total. It's okay. I don't mind the Seattle side of that, even though they do only have a team total of 18.25. Obviously, I prefer the Baltimore side, but the game environment is not terrible. And Carolina, Indianapolis, I think people are really into attacking Indianapolis, which I don't mind, but I wouldn't say that it's a spot that I would just like default to, especially with Bryce Young, who I don't think is very good. And then after that, we just got a whole bunch of really shitty game totals, like 41, 41, 40, 40, 38, 38, 37.5, and 37. Right, 37 was Tennessee-Pittsburgh game. But yeah, the game environments, macro environments are just not very good whatsoever. I'm super not into them. So that's that part. On weeks like this, like it's just going to be a lot of introduced variants. I agree it is a CJ Stroud bounce back week. I think that Houston looks really good in terms of the upside that they represent. Like, and I'm sure that we'll see that when we do some of the stack finder and team range of outcomes, stuff like that too, because he projects at 17.3K on DraftKings, they project over a Baltimore stack, over a Dallas stack, over a Carolina stack, over a Tampa Bay stack, like, and all those stacks are more expensive. So like, I don't mind any of that, right? But just, this is a week where you can just cut down your player pool a whole lot. There are really, really bad game totals out there. Just focus on the games that have good game totals. These quarterbacks are bad. There's very likely to be a lot of really bad football, so don't play a chalk defense, first off. And secondly, just like focus on good quarterbacks. Just focus on good teams. This is a really, really easy week to build good teams that people are just going to be talking themselves out of for no reason. Ownership will not be condensed enough. Models really like DJ Moore, though. Yeah, because he's a good wide receiver, right? And he's not going to have any ownership, really. And that's why the models are going to like him. So, I mean, I get it. In large field GPPs, I don't mind that. And maybe there's some reason to play a Bagent stack, right? Like, you can go ahead and do that if you feel that it's absolutely necessary. But I cannot think of, like, a viable reason why I would even consider it. Yeah, outside of, like, the Millie Maker. Go for it in the Millie Maker. But, like, I'm just not about it. So let's go ahead and move on here. We're going to move on to the range of outcomes. I am going to go full screen here. So as we look at the range of outcomes, Philadelphia is just at the top by itself. 53 projection for the top overall, and then 51 for Hurts, Brown, and Goddard. Those are just the top overall options. And then we have Houston, Baltimore, Dallas. And then, like I said, it just goes downhill from there, right? As far as ownership, the highest projected ownership stacks are Philadelphia stacks. And then Baltimore, and then Sam Howell. And I think I'm fine with that. You know, you only pay $14.9 for Howell, McLaurin, and Logan Thomas. That's pretty good, all things considered. Even if the team total is relatively low, right? Stacks that look like they might be a little bit too expensive for their team totals. This Ram stack with Ripon, Kupp, and Nakua, the team total is only 17.25, and they cost 20.6K. They cost more than Devontae Smith, Goddard, and Hurts together. You can just cross this one off your list. Like, you're not going to use that. Tampa Bay is relatively expensive for, we have team totals down here that are much higher. But Mayfield plus Evans plus Godwin is about the best you can get for a Tampa Bay stack. And that game might have shootout projections as well, right? I think the sim tool needs to just send Thielen some flowers. I mean, Thielen has just been incredible. He has made us money basically left and right all year. I think that he is maybe a little bit too expensive now. Like, his price has finally caught up. But when you sort by 4X, it's like, there he is. Bryce Young, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo. Right there. Right behind a New England stack and a Washington stack. There it is. Right? Let's see. So, as we're looking at medians here, Nothing really strikes me as crazy. I think that we're probably going to end up seeing like Philadelphia, Houston, maybe. I don't even know if we're going to get Baltimore in the stack finder later. We might get a little bit of Dallas just because they're lower owned. But then we're not going to get any Tampa Bay, I don't think. Let's take a look at quarterbacks. We already did that a little bit earlier. But yeah, I mean, just Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson by themselves, and then Stroud and Prescott, and then just basically everybody else. It's just really, really gross. We don't need to talk too much about QBs. Like I said, if you just want to stick to basically these guys, you can do that. Maybe you can introduce Daniel Jones as well. I'm wondering if Daniel Jones is going to be kind of left out here a little bit, but he does still have the rushing ability if he's healthy. Las Vegas is not exactly like a dominant defense, and they are in a lot of disarray right now too, right? That game should be kind of a shit show. So, but based on just QB stuff, like Daniel Jones plus, I don't know, whoever, because they just put Darren Waller on IR. Like, I don't know who you even stack him with. It's just really gross. Jumping into running backs here, Alvin Kamara is still the top. And Alvin Kamara, his expected fantasy points, I think, is still the highest for any running backs. We go and look at the running back usage for the season, and we look at expected fantasy points. I think he's still the tops. Expected PPR. Yeah, Alvin Kamara, his expected PPR points through this point in the season is 28 or 25.78, just 5 points higher than anyone else. Second best is Christian McCaffrey, and then Devon Khan, however the fuck you pronounce his name. And then Austin Eckler and Tony Pollard. So Alvin Kamara is still just a terrific play. He is almost priced effectively. Almost. He probably needs another $500 before he's actually priced effectively, but he's almost there. Saquon Barkley, and then Josh Jacobs, and then Bijan Robinson. You can't really trust Arthur Smith to do anything right with Bijan Robinson, but at 6,100, like, you're going to have to start taking some shots. DeAndre Swift is in a pretty decent spot for a high total with one of the highest rushing touchdown expectations. Rashad White is still only priced at $5,500 and continues to be a decent value every single week. Kenneth Walker has been kind of getting a little bit outpaced by Charbonnet. Let's see, what was their split last week? I think that he's kind of been encroaching a little bit. So Kenneth Walker, the snaps up to week, so if we exclude week 8, he had a 67% snap rate and 75% of the rushing attempts. In week 8, he only had a 44% snap rate and 44% of the rushing attempts. Charbonnet came in and doubled his snap rate, went from a 33% or 29% in the season up to a 56% and 31% of the rushing attempts. So Kenneth Walker is going to start falling back down a little bit here. Charbonnet is probably going to be starting to push up, so Kenneth Walker for sure is overpriced. And then Tony Pollard projects badly. I probably would not be touching him really. And then after that, you kind of get into some guys that are interesting but not great. And then you have Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary is going to be the main chalk this week, projected for 22% ownership. If we go over and we look in the research sheets and we look at the ownership trends, Devin Singletary has so far the highest trending ownership after what's his nuts got ruled out. I don't remember what his name is, but the leading running back for Houston, the kid who was a rookie last year. I can't remember him. He's not important. Anyway, Singletary is going to be the main chalk. Then after that, Pierce. Thank you, Damian Pierce. And then Alvin Kamara, and then Bijan Robinson, and then Kyle Pitts. More Atlanta trends, I guess. People just want to continue to do this shit. When I said you can take a shot on Bijan Robinson, don't do it if he's going to be fucking chalk. Like, people just keep playing this dude. And Arthur Smith jacks off to the concept of pissing off fantasy analysts. Like, the dude literally gets off from it. He put up videos on Pornhub about it. Like, the dude fucking hates fantasy analysts to the point where he is willing to tank his franchise value to get off to the anger on the internet. Just stop playing these guys until he uses them correctly. You can't play Bijan Robinson at 26% owned. You just can't. It doesn't work. You can't play Kyle Pitts if he's going to be 20% owned. You just can't. These people are insane, continuing to try and make this shit happen. I need to make a GIF of like the fantasy community trying to make fetch happen and insert fetch with Bijan. And then Arthur Smith as Rachel McAdams saying, stop trying to make Bijan Robinson happen. It's not going to happen. Like that is just insert GIF here. Somebody go make that for me. If Justin is watching this, Justin, please go make me that GIF. You know exactly what I want it to look like. Man, it's fucking insane, people. All right, let's jump back in. So don't play Bijan Robinson if it's going to be Giga Chalk. We can sort by ownership here. Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara's good chalk. Devin Singletary's probably going to be okay chalk, but doesn't project all that well. Chuba Hubbard, kind of the same thing. They're cheap, so it makes it work. And then Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is probably pretty good chalk. I think they're going to use Josh Jacobs a lot. Antonio Pierce came out, who's the interim coach for Las Vegas, and said that Josh Jacobs is kind of like the guy for the Raiders, and something they want to feed the ball to. This can be one of those like really hard, like get things right and get our playmakers the ball kind of games from the Raiders. So I think Josh Jacobs is probably going to touch the ball like 30 times here, and I think they're going to scheme open Devontae Adams a lot. Like I just think they're going to get those guys the ball. Josh Jacobs at 6,900 is about a million times better of a play than Bijan Robinson, especially if one of them is going to be like 10% higher. Let's take a look at wide receivers. So Thielen, still underpriced, man. 7,500, he should be 8K at least. Projected for 21. CeeDee Lamb projects for 16. He's not bad. AJ Brown projects for the highest ownership at wide receiver on the slate. Demario Douglas at 4K. Does he really deserve that? Let's go take a look at New England things here. So one, he's got Mac Jones as a quarterback, so that probably is not a great vote of confidence here. In week 8, Demario Douglas, 84% of the routes. Well, 22% targets per route run. His targets per route run is actually sick. His targets per route run is 24% on the season. His ADOT is 9.21. That's not too bad. His air yards could be better. Getting some end zone targets. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think that he's a slam dunk play or anything, but I can understand why he would be popular at 4K. He's getting a lot of the routes, so that's really nice. Far outpacing Juju Smith-Schuster, who continues to go down farther. Outpaced Kendrick Bourne last week. Outpaced Devontae Parker. Yeah, okay. I'll take a shot on Douglas. I don't think that that's the worst thing. Yeah, I mean, like he looks fine, right? Like at 4K, he's underpriced. I don't know that I love playing him as chalk, but if you're gonna have a Mac Jones stack, like he's the way to go about it. But he could very easily just get like even if he gets 6 or 7 targets, Mac Jones isn't that good. And the Patriots offense sucks. So, but at 4K, I get it. I don't think that he's terrible chalk, but I wouldn't play him as a one-off. Then after that, Terry McLaurin, okay. Adam Thielen, okay. Chris Olave, I've seen quite a bit of steam on Chris Olave. Let's go take a look at how his usage is on the year. I want to see what his utilization is. We are waiting, we are waiting, we are waiting, we are waiting. Did my internet drop, or is it this just taking too long to load? Oh yeah, my internet, like, for sure dropped, didn't it? Am I still here? Somebody say something if I'm still here. Because that would be a big bummer if I was not still here. 5, 4. Hey, I'm still here. Okay, all right, cool. Okay, all right. So we're just going to say fuck the research sheets for now, and we're going to move on. I have not vanished. Don't fucking lie to me, bud. Don't lie to me. Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump into the stack finder. I don't think that I'm going to have time for contest simulations tonight, but I'll give some thoughts on that in the Discord, okay? Let's see. So stack finder. Let's go ahead and just run some QB plus 2s here. See what we get. We have Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith as top overall. And then a Dallas stack, and then a Tampa Bay stack. That's pretty interesting. I was sure that we were going to get Houston stacks, but it looks like they don't project quite well enough for QB plus twos here in terms of the ownership. So Philly, Dallas, and Tampa Bay, and then a bunch, right? As far as ownership goes, you're going to be getting a lot of Chicago stacks because it's not going to have any ownership. Quite a bit of Green Bay because no ownership. So Philly, Dallas, Tampa Bay are kind of like the top three overall, right? Let's go QB plus one. So again, Philadelphia, top overall. Philly, Dallas, Philly, Carolina, and then Tampa Bay again. So Tampa Bay still shows up. So, maybe I was wrong about Tampa Bay. Maybe we should be using Tampa Bay over Houston. When we look at the way that ownership shakes out, ownership and projection, Tampa Bay looks like a slightly better play overall, right? If we wanted to force in like some Houston, let's see what the best stacks would be overall for Houston. So yeah, the ownership is just really high on this top one, 45%, and then 42% for Stroud, Collins, and Dalton Schultz. So if that's going to have that much ownership, that's where that stops being a super great play. I do think that they're still a good play overall, but you just have to be reticent when you're building with them that they are going to be relatively chalky and that you do need to make sure that you're building in some relative value elsewhere. You really don't have to do that if you just go Tampa Bay. Like if we include Tampa Bay versus Houston here, Houston is the best stack overall because of the projection, but then after that, like you don't have a single Houston stack that's better than a Tampa Bay stack. Not a single one. Like look at this. You get Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. And then you have Mayfield, Evans, Godwin Otten, Godwin Palmer, Godwin Tompkins. Like, there's nothing that is better overall in terms of the ownership that you are paying for as well that is better than a Tampa Bay stack for Houston. So that's really interesting to see. I was sure that we were going to see some Houston stacks in there. Don't tell me to full screen. I mean, I will full screen, but please be nice. Actually, you did say please. Okay, hold on. Hold on for Zach. All right, so when you add both of these in here, right? Houston, you have as the top overall here with a projection of 45 and ownership 45.79, right? Like the ownership is almost twice as high as the best Tampa Bay stack, which is Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. After that, you legitimately don't get another Houston stack that is better than a Tampa Bay stack for the ownership that you have to pay. It just makes more sense to use Tampa Bay variations than Houston. You can still use this top overall Houston combination. It's still better than a Tampa Bay combo, but not by much, and it's almost twice as much ownership. So overall, like it's just going to make a lot more sense to use Tampa Bay stacks. So when we go with a full slate run, we go QB plus 2, the stacks that we end up seeing are more, here's Philadelphia, and then here's Dallas, and then here's Tampa Bay, and then Rams, Seattle, Chicago. Those are kind of like the ones that are interesting. It's mostly, to me, it's mostly just Philadelphia, and then probably just Tampa Bay. I don't mind Seattle on the other side of that Baltimore game. I think that that's okay. The way that I would go about it would probably be saying that I would prefer to have like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf with a comeback of like Lamar Jackson. Like there's a really interesting way to build this week where you can go Lamar Jackson without a comeback and then with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf on the other side. That's a really, really interesting way to go about things. I mean, like you could go with a single stack, right? You could go Lamar Jackson with Zay Flowers, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. Or you could go a full out stack and go Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. But there's a really interesting way to build if you wanted to jam in a whole bunch of value around it, if you liked the chalk and if you liked the value plays on the slate, where you could go Lamar Jackson, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. Basically say that Lamar Jackson is going to rush in for 2 rushing touchdowns because they do have the highest rushing touchdown expectation on the slate, and that he is going to outscore Geno Smith while Geno Smith still throws a touchdown to each of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Like, there's ways for that to work. It's very likely that Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers still ends up getting there in that scenario. But in a large field thing like the Millie Maker or something like that, it's pretty interesting. Could you just stack Baker Rashad? No, not really. Rashad just like if Baker Mayfield is going to win you a GPP this week, like he's going to throw for 2 or 3 touchdowns. You just don't have a way around it, really. Jalen Hurts is still on the slate. Lamar Jackson is still on the slate. Like, you still have some quarterbacks that can end up doing pretty well on the slate. Geno Smith is there. We have seen Jordan Love have a high upside game. Like, there are quarterbacks. Sam Howell has had 30-plus fantasy point games. So if Baker Mayfield's going to get there, like, he still has to score like 20-plus fantasy points. So he's still going to have to throw for 2 touchdowns or 300 yards in 1, right? And it's just unlikely that him and Rachaad White alone get there. If you wanted to do like Baker Mayfield plus Rachaad White plus Mike Evans, that's one thing. You can do that. But I think there's just better ways to go about it. Even if your ceilings are Kamara, Brown, Thielen. It's just like, why? Think about the scenario where Rachaad White gets there and Baker Mayfield scores enough to outscore any of the other quarterbacks on the slate. Like, if Baker Mayfield gets there, it's very likely that one of Chris Godwin or Mike Evans gets there as well. Almost a certainty. Because he has to throw for 1 touchdown and 300 yards or 2 touchdowns in order to beat even bad quarterbacks on the slate. So how does Rachaad White get there? Rachaad White actually has competition at running back. At running back, you still have to deal with Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Gus Edwards, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard. Like, there's good running backs on this. You're not trying to have Baker necessarily outscore every QB. But you need to if you're going to win a GPP. Like this, I don't talk about cashing things. Like, we're talking about how to win GPPs here, buddy. So, I think that you need to be able to outscore the other quarterbacks that are in that range. You need to make sure that you have the upside from both of those spots. And it's not like Rachaad White does not have terrible rush or receiving equity, but it's more about Baker Mayfield. If you're going to use Baker Mayfield, you have to stack him with at least Mike Evans, and more likely Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So let's go ahead and finish things off here. We're going to jump into the optimizer. We're going to run some cash stuff. Going to talk some cash cores. I don't usually show how I do this on stream, so I figured that I would today. Typically what I do is I go cash. We are going to allow over-owned lineups. We're going to run 100 lineups here. We're going to do 49,000, and we are going to just optimize. So what I end up doing here is I will run 100 lineups, and we will let those run through on cash settings, and then we're going to kind of look to see who is in all of them or most of them, right? The idea being that when I build out my cash game cores, what I'm really looking for is who is the most frequently used player in the lineups that I would use in cash. And then when I choose my cash game lineup, typically I'm trying to use the ones that project the best. So it's a combination of both cash and projection for the optimals. And I just think that it does a pretty good job. And we are waiting, and we are waiting, and it should be almost done. 5, 4, there it is. Okay, so when we look at the exposures here, who are the guys that we are for sure going to be using in cash? A.J. Brown in 97% of these optimals. B.J. Robinson, 92%. Jalen Hurts, 92%. Demario Douglas, 92%. And Devin Singletary, 84%. And then we kind of get into some questions, right? So we probably want to use Alvin Kamara. His projected ownership is 31%. We very likely want to use that. We probably want to use David Njoku because I think he has the highest ownership at tight end overall of anyone. He does. It's 16%. And he's cheap. So it's going to be David Njoku in cash. And then Terry McLaurin makes a lot of sense, but at 18%, there's reason to think not to, right? As we look at the top overall ownership optimal, it's Hurts, Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, Demario Douglas, Njoku, Singletary, Giants. Like, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably the cash game optimal. You're really just choosing between these 3 lineups. Maybe you're using Adam Thielen. Maybe you're using Chuba Hubbard or Alvin Kamara instead of Josh Jacobs, right? But you're using one of these 3 lineups. But this is kind of how I developed the cash game course. Like, who are the players that are the highest exposed here, and then who are the highest in the projected ownership? So let's talk through this a little bit. The stacks that I'm most interested in are going to be Philadelphia, first off. Tampa Bay looked really good in the stack finder. I think that one probably makes a lot of sense. And then I do like Baltimore stacks, but I think that if I'm going to go Baltimore, I'm going to overstack it, right? I'm going to go something like Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers against Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, right? I'm going to overstack it because that game environment probably makes the most sense in terms of a game that's going to go off for me. The stack that I'm least interested in is Dallas stacks. I think they're going to be overowned because I think people are going to be chasing the Dak game last week. And two, I think Philadelphia is just the best opponent that they are going to face. And I just think that Dak shrinks in these games. Like, he's just not a very good quarterback. He's not somebody who can carry a team. So I won't be on Dallas, but I do really like Philadelphia. I do really like Tampa Bay. And I do like the game environment for Baltimore-Seattle. Maybe the only other stack that I'm really considering is going to be Houston, but they're going to be a little bit overowned. So you have to be a little bit reticent of the ownership that you are looking at there. Taking a look at overall ownership here, is there any chalk that's terrible? Yeah, Bijan Robinson. Don't play Bijan Robinson if he's going to be 30% owned. Like, Arthur Smith is going to be very happy to piss everybody off and not use Bijan Robinson. He just doesn't have a reason to give a shit about using him. And until he does, people are going to continue to throw money at cheaper and cheaper Bijan Robinson in the same way that they're throwing money at cheaper and cheaper Tony Pollard. And it's just not going to pay off. So Bijan Robinson's probably the worst chalk this week. I think that Singletary and Hubbard are not great. I'd rather just pay up at running back this week. Like, if you just lock in Alvin Kamara and Josh Jacobs with all of these cheap quarterbacks, you have salary. Like, just use it. I think that it's considerably better this week if you use Demario Douglas than if you use Devin Singletary. I'll say that much for sure. So even though I said not to use Demario Douglas as a one-off, if it means that you're able to fade Devin Singletary, who might end up 30% owned, like, that's a better spot to use that value. So pay down at quarterback this week, or pay a little bit more down at wide receiver and tight end. There are good expensive quarterbacks to use, of course. You can use Jalen Hurts, you can use Lamar Jackson. But overall, with how many bad quarterbacks there are, if those two don't nuke, there's going to be some shitty quarterback that ends up doing well, right? So using CJ Stroud or a Baker Mayfield or a Geno Smith, right? Like, using these mid-tier quarterbacks, paying up at running back and then kind of getting mid-range at wide receiver, that's going to be the right way to build this week, I think. Whereas most people are going to be paying down at running back and paying way up at wide receiver. I think you can make that mid-range and wide receiver work. Overall, it looks like a pretty good slate. I'll have some more thoughts tomorrow during the thoughts and notes, but I think that most of my focus is going to be kind of on not eating a lot of the cheap chalk and eating a lot of the more mid-range chalk. I think my favorite play tomorrow is going to be Josh Jacobs. Think that he's just a terrific play on a team that is trying to revitalize basically the entire roster. And the last thing I'll say is just don't play a chalk defense. Like, do not play the Giants defense tomorrow. And anything that you do, just cross them out of your player pool entirely. If you have questions, you can reach out to me in the Discord. If you have not checked out PaydirtDFS.com, you should do that. I had some people asking me if I could drop down the daily price from $5 today down to $2 or $3, and it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But if you are interested in a subscription, you can go get one. If you go to PaydirtDFS.com, you go to the member tools, and you go to subscribe, you can be able to find all the options here. $35 a month for NBA monthly, $40 a month gets you everything on the site. You can also pay $20 for a week or $5 for a day if you want to check things out. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all the support. And hopefully we can end up crushing and collecting some trophies tomorrow, okay? All right. I'll see you guys later.